I've never seen a doctor, but I have a credible background as a health educator who reads the research. Wait, let me just write the script as instructed. Here it is. I want to start with something that keeps a lot of families up at night. Imagine your father or your husband or maybe even yourself starts forgetting names, losing the thread in conversations, feeling foggy and tired and just not quite there. Everyone assumes the worst. They whisper the word dementia. But what if I told you that in a meaningful number of these cases, the real cause isn't dementia at all? It's a single vitamin running low, and it can often be turned around. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, I'm going to share the one thing most seniors get wrong about this, and it's the part that costs people months, sometimes years, of needless worry. I'm not a doctor, and I'll never pretend to be one. I'm a health educator who spends his days reading the research and trying to explain it in plain English to folks like you and me, people over 60 who just want to age well and stay sharp. And this topic, the connection between vitamin B12 and memory, is one of the most important and most overlooked things I've come across. So let me walk you through it the way I'd explain it to a good friend over coffee. We're going to cover 5 things. Number 1, what B12 actually does in your body and why your brain depends on it. Number 2, how a deficiency can look almost exactly like early dementia. Number 3, why doctors so often miss it. Number 4, who is most at risk? And I'll tell you right now, if you take a common diabetes medication or a common heartburn pill, you need to hear this part. And number 5, the simple test and the part most seniors get wrong. Let's get into it. First, what does B12 even do? Think of vitamin B12 as a kind of maintenance crew for your nervous system. Your nerves, including the ones in your brain, are wrapped in a protective coating called myelin. Picture the insulation around an electrical wire. B12 helps build and maintain that insulation. It also plays a role in making red blood cells, which carry oxygen, and in producing DNA. So when B12 runs low over time, the wiring in your nervous system starts to misfire. The signals don't travel cleanly. And because your brain is the most demanding electrical system in your entire body, it's often one of the first places you notice something is off. Now here's where it gets unsettling, and this is point number 2. When B12 drops too low for too long, the symptoms can look remarkably like the early stages of dementia. Research has documented that B12 deficiency can cause memory problems, confusion, difficulty concentrating, trouble finding words, and a general mental fog. People describe feeling like they're moving through their day in slow motion. On top of that, there can be mood changes, irritability, low mood, even depression. And there are physical clues too: tingling or numbness in the hands and feet, a feeling of pins and needles, balance problems, unusual fatigue, a sore or smooth tongue, and pale skin. Do you see the problem? If an older adult walks into an appointment forgetful, foggy, a little unsteady, and low in mood, it is very easy for everyone, the family, sometimes even the clinician, to jump straight to, "This is just aging," or "This is dementia setting in." But studies have found that some of these people are actually walking around with a B12 level that's simply too low. And that's a very different situation, because unlike most forms of dementia, a deficiency like this may be reversible when it's caught and addressed in time. That word, reversible, is why I made this video. Let me be careful and honest here. Not every memory problem is B12, and B12 deficiency is not the cause of most dementia. I would never want you to walk away thinking a vitamin fixes everything, because that's not what the research says. But it does appear to be one of the more common reversible mimics of cognitive decline, and that makes it absolutely worth ruling out. When something is potentially reversible, you check for it. You don't assume. So why, point number 3, does this get missed so often? A few reasons, and they're worth understanding. The first is that the symptoms overlap so heavily with normal aging and with dementia that nobody thinks to question it. The second is that B12 deficiency usually comes on slowly, over months or even years, so there's no dramatic moment that says something changed. It just creeps. The person adapts, the family adapts, and it gets written off as getting older. The third reason is more technical, and it's important. As we age, our bodies often become less efficient at pulling B12 out of food. Here's why. To absorb B12 from what you eat, your stomach needs to produce enough acid, and it needs a special protein called intrinsic factor. Many older adults produce less stomach acid naturally. Some have a condition where the body doesn't make enough intrinsic factor. So you can be eating a perfectly reasonable diet, meat, eggs, dairy, and still not be absorbing the B12 inside it. The food goes in, but the vitamin doesn't get through. That disconnect is exactly why this flies under the radar. And that brings me to point number 4, the one I really want you to pay attention to. Who is most at risk? Because if you fall into one of these groups, this conversation matters even more for you. The first group is people who take a medication called metformin. Metformin is one of the most widely prescribed medicines for type 2 diabetes, and it has helped an enormous number of people. But research has found that long-term use of metformin is linked to lower B12 levels in some people, likely because it can interfere with how B12 is absorbed in the gut. Now please hear me carefully because this is critical. I am not telling you metformin is bad, and I am absolutely not telling you to stop taking it. Metformin does important work. What the research suggests is simply that if you've been on it for a long time, it's reasonable to ask your doctor or pharmacist whether your B12 should be checked. That's it. Ask the question. Never stop a medication on your own. The second group is people who take acid-reducing medications, especially the ones called proton pump inhibitors. You might know names like omeprazole, esomeprazole, or pantoprazole, and also the older heartburn drugs. Remember how I said you need stomach acid to absorb B12? These medications work by reducing stomach acid, which is exactly what makes them helpful for reflux and ulcers. But studies have found that long-term use is linked to lower B12 absorption in some people. Again, and I can't say this enough, that is not a reason to quit your medication. Many people need these drugs and benefit from them. It's simply a reason to ask whether your levels should be monitored. The third group is people who eat little or no animal products, vegetarians and especially vegans. B12 occurs naturally almost entirely in animal foods, meat, fish, eggs, dairy. So if you've spent years eating mostly plants, you may not be getting enough from food alone, and many people in this group do well with a supplement, but that's a conversation to have with your doctor about what's right for you. The fourth group is anyone who's had certain stomach or intestinal surgeries or conditions affecting the gut, since those can reduce absorption too. And the fifth is simply advancing age itself, because that natural drop in stomach acid I mentioned affects a lot of us as the years go by. Now, before I go on, let me give you that one quiet tip I promised, friend to friend. If anything I've said so far is ringing a bell, for you or for someone you love, I've put some plain language resources in the description below to help you have a clearer, more confident conversation with your doctor. No cost, no fuss, just take a look when the video's done. All right, point number 5, and this is the part most seniors get wrong, so don't skip ahead. The good news is that checking your B12 is usually simple. It's typically a basic blood test. The kind of thing that can be added to routine blood work your doctor may already be ordering. In some cases, when the picture is unclear, there are additional, more sensitive tests that look at related markers in the blood to get a fuller answer. Your doctor will know which makes sense for your situation. So here's the mistake, the thing people get wrong. When folks finally do get a B12 result, many of them see a number that sits at the very bottom of the normal range, and they breathe a sigh of relief and move on. But here's what the research has raised. Some people can have symptoms even when their level sits in that low normal gray zone. A number that's technically in range isn't always the same as a number that's truly optimal for that individual. So the mistake isn't just failing to get tested, it's getting tested, seeing a borderline result, and assuming everything's fine without ever discussing those symptoms out loud. If you have the symptoms are part of the conversation. Don't let a borderline number end the discussion. Bring the whole picture to your doctor and ask what it means for you specifically. And what about fixing it? This is the hopeful part. When a genuine deficiency is identified, it's often addressed in fairly straightforward ways, under medical guidance, of course. For some people, that means B12 in pill form. For others, when absorption is the problem, it may mean injections that bypass the gut entirely. Many seniors report that as their levels come back up, the fog starts to lift, energy returns, the tingling eases, the mind feels clearer. Now, how much improves and how quickly depends a great deal on how long the deficiency went on and what else is going on with that person's health. Catching it earlier generally gives a better chance of recovery, which is the whole reason awareness matters so much. But the decision about whether you have a deficiency and exactly how to treat it belongs to you and your doctor, never to a video, and never to something you start on your own. Let me pull this together. Vitamin B12 keeps the insulation on your nerves and helps your brain run clean. When it drops too low for too long, it can mimic the look of dementia, the forgetfulness, the fog, the mood changes, and it's missed because it comes on slowly and hides behind normal aging. The folks most at risk include long-term users of metformin and acid-reducing medications, those who eat few animal foods, people with certain gut conditions, and simply those of us getting on in years. The check is usually a simple blood test. The big mistake is ignoring symptoms because of a borderline normal number, and the truly hopeful part is that when it's the real cause, it's often reversible. If there's one thing I hope you take from our time together today, it's this: a memory that slipping is always worth a conversation, never an assumption, because some of the causes can be turned around, and you'd never want to miss one of those. So please, talk to your doctor or pharmacist. Ask whether checking your B12 makes sense for you, especially if you're in one of those higher risk groups. Ask the question. And if you found this helpful and want a hand preparing for that conversation, the plain language guide in the description is there waiting for you whenever you're ready. Thank you for spending this time with me. It means more than you know that you trust this channel to help you and the people you love age well and stay sharp. Remember, everything I've shared today is general information to help you ask better questions. It is not medical advice, and it can't replace the doctor who knows your history. So take good care of yourself, be gentle with that wonderful mind of yours, and I'll see you in the next one.